Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, and today we're at the lamp bench with this very nice crystal table lamp. Now I think this is real crystal as opposed to ordinary glass, like there's a big difference. And I also think that it's cut crystal, where someone actually sat at a grindstone and cut these crosshatch patterns in all the way around in the glass, all done by hand. The cord starts down here at the bottom. It's molded plastic, some kind of vinyl. The brand name is Leviton that's put on there. And we've got this really curious inline switch, which I like a lot. And I'm going to try and save that. Now, one of the things that convinces me that this is real crystal and a nice piece is it came in with 10 of these 8-inch spears. These are very unusual, very rare, and I hope to God I don't break one of them because that would just be a bad day. The socket is porcelain, which kind of indicates a upmarket lamp, but it could also just mean that it's a little older than it appears to be. Pull this out of the way. And be careful unscrewing this because there's nothing else holding this pipe together except this socket. So once I pull this out, all these pieces are going to become loose. And I want to be very careful. One of the problems you run into when you're working with crystal is rusty hardware. For stuff like this, it's easy enough just to replace it. Pieces like this, which is chrome plated, where it's threaded here, the chrome's worn away and so now it's rusted. Wire brush will do fine, but the stains do leach out onto the glass. I use this stuff, Wink Rust Stain Remover. It says white sinks and white toilet bowls, all color flashed fabrics, which is pretty good. Since I don't use it for cleaning the bathroom, just crystal, this bottle has lasted quite a long time, long enough that it's actually been endorsed by Dr. Laura, for all that's worth. Now, next to the box cutter, the wire wheel brush is probably the most likely thing in the shop that's going to hurt you through careless use. Now, it goes without saying that you wear eye protection, and I don't recommend gloves though. Gloves can get caught on the wires and, bad things can happen. Pieces of pipe like this where you can get a good grip on it, that's okay to hold in your hand. But never, ever try to hold small parts against the wire brush. If you have faith in your grip, you can use a pair of pliers. If you got a little less faith, a pair of vice grips will hold on to it. But once you've got all the rust knocked back, a couple of passes back and forth on a sanding block, this is 400 wet sand, will give you a nice shine back to bare steel and should be acceptable to put back together in a crystal lamp. There's a few pieces of hardware that aren't commonly seen on other kinds of lamps. These are called Bobiche reducers. They come in plastic and they come in steel, and they have a hole in the middle for the regular lamp pipe and a slightly raised portion right here, because what it does is it reduces that hole down to where this thing will stay in place with a pipe going through it. Now that I have all the glass clean, I've got all the metal parts shiny as they're going to get, it's time to start putting it back together. And that begins with a little bit of blue thread lock on the bottom here, because all threaded connections, I like to put that on it. Keeps me from having to tighten it down until it screams. And there's a limit to how tight you can get a glass vase. That's just all there is to it. Now I prefer to have the pipe captured at the base, a nut underneath and a nut at the top. That way when I go to put all this together, it's just a little bit easier, but that's not practical on this kind of thing. So I've got this little fixture here, and I put one of my washers, and this will hold everything pretty much in place. Got my reducer, and one more washer, then a Bobiche reducer, and another Bobiche reducer. Now Bobiche reducers only have the rise on one side, so where glass meets glass, you've got to have two of them. And then we have the metal one that goes up here. The old check ring had felt washers on the inside, just basically as spacers. I'm going to put rubber washers on the inside of this one. And then our candle cup goes on there, and a little more blue goo, because I'm going to put a nut right at the top of this pipe. Now when it comes to how tight, there's a limit to how tight you can get a stack of glass before something breaks. You don't want to go that far. You don't want to have it loose so that it rattles, but you're really not going to get it so tight that someone can't force it to turn if they really want to. If this were a ceramic lamp, I could put a bead of silicone down here at the bottom and up here at the top, and that would pretty much keep it in place through any sort of ordinary use. However, that would show on a crystal lamp like this, so that's kind of out of the question. I'll put a little more of the blue thread lock on the socket, and I can screw this down hand tight and know that when that stuff sets up, this socket's not going to come loose during ordinary bulb changing and that sort of thing. Now running the wire, it's just a matter of pushing it up the pipe. Now if this were a table lamp with an Edison socket, I could tie a underwriter's knot in this cord and be pretty sure that if someone were to trip and pull it off the table, they wouldn't yank the ends out from underneath the screws. Not really enough for me to do that, so I have a different kind of trick. I've got this twist tie here, a wire tie, sometimes called a zip tie. This is a fairly stiff one. I'll put it between and then back around, just to sort of increase the mass of the whole thing. And I've made a little mark on here, because what this will do is that will choke if someone tries to pull it down into the pipe, where you'd have two live wires inside a steel pipe, and just nothing good happens after that. And now the sermon of the socket. You may have heard this 22 times before, but listen again because it's really that important. Wire sold for lamps in North America has one side has smooth insulation and one side has ridges. The sockets, one screw is brass colored and one is silver colored. The side with the ridges always goes on the silver colored screw. You wrap it around it clockwise, tuck it down underneath there, get it nice and neat, and then when you tighten the screw down, it will pull the wire under the screw instead of pushing it out. You do the same for the brass colored screw with the smooth wire. And that is pretty much all there is to it. But we're going to go on to what I think is actually the most interesting part of rewiring this lamp. The lamp came with this really neat thumb switch. And I'd like to keep it if I can. I think it works. It feels nice and crisp. I could use one of these, which would certainly match the cord a little bit better. But I think this has got most of the character of the lamp in it. It's unusual in the way it's made. And if I can get it apart, do an inspection here, we'll see just how, well, see if I can get this off. That's the way it works. One always comes off easy and the other one will tear you up. Switches are the weak point in any lighting system. And the reason is because when you turn the switch off, there's always a small arc or spark right there at the contacts. And that creates heat, builds up, and will burn the contacts, and eventually the switch will fail. And the little spring is a critical part, because what that does, that ensures a fast, quick snap. Open it up and get the two pieces away from each other as quickly as possible. Keeps that arc down to a minimum. Now I've got a little bamboo skewer here with a piece of 400 grit sandpaper glued to it, and I'm going to use that to clean the contact surfaces up as well as I can, at least the parts that I can reach. Another reason I want to try and save this switch is because the alternative, the modern thumb switch, depends on these little spikes right there. And they pierce the insulation of the wire, and that is your main contact. Of course, there's a little spring in here just like that. But sometimes getting these things to pierce through and make good connection is kind of a pain in the ass. And you'll notice the old cord, the stranded wire, which is kind of twisted up and stuck underneath the screw terminal. That's not good practice. That may have been the way they did it when they made this lamp, but that's not the way it's done today, and certainly not the way it's done in the secret underground laboratory. The National Electrical Code dictates that stranded wires can't be put under screw terminals for the reasons that we all just saw. So I make a cut, always on the smooth wire. All connections and switches are made on the smooth side. The ridged wire should go all the way from the plug to the socket without being interrupted. And to turn a stranded wire into a single wire, it has to be tinned, which basically means just putting a drop of solder on the tip. Now twist these nice and tight. Get my handy little soldering jig up here and my soldering gun, and I just put a drop on each one, and that way it'll go underneath the screw nice and tight. Won't cause problems for anybody. I put a little curl in it. It always goes clockwise under the screw. Get it tucked in there nice underneath it. Tighten it down. Do the other side the same way. Now all I have to do is just get this shell back together. These neat little rings should pop on without too much trouble. And this job is basically finished. This is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, and I thank you for sitting through this video with me about this really nice crystal table lamp. I would also appreciate it if you would hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. I welcome all questions and comments, any subject, lamps, lighting, chandeliers, furniture repair, Greek philosophy, whatever you got. So, thank you again for watching.